Welcome, everybody. The time has passed 9 o'clock this Wednesday morning, and we are ready to begin this meeting in our Lean Construction Denmark study group, where we meet 4 or 5 times a year and discuss different aspects of lean construction. And this day we have a special guest star, maybe even. And we are very, very happy to have you with us today, Christopher, and very happy that you would present your project and findings. And actually, I think that I was just give the screen to you, and Christopher and I have just talked about if you have any question during the presentation, please write them in the chat so we don't forget them, or you don't forget them, and then we can have a question and discussion after the presentation from Christopher. But again, we are very happy to have you with us today, Christopher, and we're really looking forward to your presentation and your work.
Great.
So please.
Thanks for the introduction. I'm very honored to be here, but I don't consider myself a star or anything like that. But thanks, yes. Okay, I can share my screen before I start the presentation, and you let me know if you can see something.
Yeah, we can see your background screen. Yeah, now.
Now perfect. You also see the presentation.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So once more, thanks for having me today and giving me the chance to present basically my doctoral studies and the results we found. So my doctoral study is based on 3 individual papers. So the results are coming from there, and the doctoral study, or the thesis in the end, is compiling all of that from a different angle. And I would like to show you let's say, the final conclusions and how we summed up everything within here. My name is Christopher Görsch. Now I'm working as a senior scientist at VTT, what is the Technical Research Center in Finland. Earlier, I was working at Aalto Universitet, where I did my doctoral study with Olli Seppänen together. That's why you will also soon see here the Aalto branding, since there all the results come from. Okay, but let's start. So the topic or the title of my thesis is Learning to See Flow, a worker-centric exploration towards task planning and control. And to give you a kind of an background where this topic is positioned in, it's focusing on the operations flow coordination, and most likely most of you have seen already the graph I'm showing soon. So we can understand construction, or construction management understands construction in a way we are carrying out tasks over time throughout different locations, what can be apartments or different floors, and through those locations different trades are going through, doing work, installing work with a different pace, and we have different trades that are following each other. If we are looking at coordinating the trades so that they don't interfere with each other, we call this the process flow. But we can also look at individual trades and how they are going through, how resource efficient they are, and how fast they go through it. Here in Finland, we have this initiative now that they are trying to cut the lead time in construction by 50%, what is quite ambitious. So this topic starts not only from thinking about the process flow, but having also the operations flow in mind. So how can we improve individuals like workers, but also crews on site and trades, since this should be also beneficial for the process flow if we combine it in a clever way. And usually in construction or in research especially, the focus is on process flow and not that much on the operations flow. So starting from a research perspective, so what is known is that we see often a trend, especially many work sampling studies have shown that roughly 30 to 70% of value adding to non-value adding activities, what means we have 30% of the time of installers spent on installation work and 70% on other activities. There are tools and techniques used like last planner system or daily huddles that contribute and improve the situation, but nevertheless, over time and decades, we have shown this trend, or have seen this trend many times, of 30 to 70 of value-adding and non-value-adding activities. So we can say we have a high wasted effort within construction. And the thesis focuses on what is unknown here. It's like, first, since most of the studies have taken a management viewpoint, but this study was looking at workers, how they perceive flow, especially this operations flow, and how can we quantitatively analyze this operations flow, and then how can we basically support workers in their what we call task planning and control behavior, so all activities that are not directly related to installation work. And for that we did 2 studies following the title Learning to See. We are coming soon to Learning to See. But first we did a survey study to understand a bit the broader perspective of MEP workers in Finland. So that was the target of this survey. And we tried to gain a comprehensive understanding of which informations they use to plan and control, since we saw from earlier studies that workers are planning actively on sites and controlling their work themselves. But we didn't know how they're doing this and what they're using for that. So we had a survey here with MEP workers, so electricians, plumbers, HVAC workers across Finland, and in total we had 146 participants. One thing that emerged from the survey was we were asking how often they use different schedules. I believe you're aware with master phase, look ahead, and weekly schedules, so the level of detail increases throughout the planning process. And so we asked supervisors, so foremen, and also installers, how often they use them. We also asked how often they use self-made plans or no plans at all. What we can see from here is one is interesting that first of all they use all the schedules to plan their own work. Supervisors and installers very often. But they're using them as well as using self-made plans. And actually interesting here to see is that they are using more often, very often, those self-made plans or no plans at all. We concluded from this, or that this is indicating that management provided schedules and information are not sufficient to carry out the task on site on a day-to-day, on an hour-to-hour basis. That's why workers are doing those self-made plans and go quite much with them, since the details they need to think about are not included in those plans or meetings carried out. And we also see a lot of workers carrying out or not carrying out any planning, so I would call this go with the flow attitude. In the next step, we did a cluster analysis where we thought about which informations workers need and when they need that, and if there are differences between them. And we found there that there are early planners and late planners. Early planners because they would like to have most of the information needs, or they want to have most of the information before they arrive on site, and they are often not satisfied because there's no access to the systems, or those information are not given to those workers. More plumbers than electricians are early planners, and we also see the smaller the crew size, the higher the share of early planners. We also found late planners, since they wanted to have most of their information during preparing their task, and also there we saw many of them are not satisfied with the information provided by management. And here we see more electricians or late planners, since we always compared electricians, plumbers, and HVAC workers. And here, the bigger the crew size, the smaller the share of early planners. What could also mean that we have one early planner in a team who's carrying out most of the planning, and then we have a lot of late planners who go a bit more with the flow and do less of the planning themselves if we have bigger crews. But in smaller crews, usually they want to have the information as fast as possible or as early as possible to plan out their work. And this gave us a broader understanding to understand the differences in planning and control behaviors of workers, but also what are factors distinguishing them. In the next step, we wanted to see how all those activities that they are carrying out, since we saw from the first slide that they are doing this on a regular basis, but we also see here that they are often not satisfied with their information needs. It seems to be disturbing the work of workers, and they have to carry them out often. So now we are coming to the part of learning to see. And we did a time motion study here to study 14 workers from 4 different projects. What was a shopping mall, 2 residential projects, and 1 was an office and a hotel project. We were conducting videos with those cameras attached on the helmets, and we're filming what they were doing there. Overall, we classified and analyzed approximately 10,000 activities from those electrician, plumbers, and HVAC workers. And we did in the first trial to study a bit this data set and what we can do. Only 1 worker, and we analyzed only 5.3 hours. It's a plumber that we analyzed here, and we basically classified on a second-to-second basis what workers are doing. So for example, for 13 seconds, they did some direct work. Then for the next 27 seconds, they did some inspection work, and so on throughout those 5 hours. And then we got first to this graph that you see here, how much time the plumber spends on which activities. For example, 25% on direct work, so installation work. Quite a lot of time on working with the materials and work preparation, but also quite a lot of time on hauling materials or searching materials, as well as rework, and a lot of time, like 10% on discussions. And I would say this is maybe rather a stereotypical graph that you would get from work sampling studies, even though the level of detail is maybe a bit higher here in this graph, what is caused by the time motion study. But we also wanted to see how this turns out and how we can visualize this operations flow in detail, since we have this second-to-second data. And we were able to create a graph that is showing now, like, wait, here the mouse. So we have direct work here, we have the categories again here, and how much time is spent on each individual activity. So this could be, for example, where I'm showing, where the mouse is showing now at, could be roughly a minute of direct work, and then we are jumping to other activities. And the whole graph is showing 284 activities, what means we have 283 activity changes in just those 5.3 hours, and that was a full work day. Full work day would mean 8 hours usually here in Finland, but due to some personal data that we excluded, we had only 5.3 hours of this day. But coming back to all those changes and how quickly it changes, so on average every minute and work activity is changing. And this also means the direct work, so the installation work, we are people training for, highly skilled people that we are hiring for doing the installation work. It paused 61 times here, and a lot of other activities were carried out throughout the workday that they're usually not trained for. And since I said we used in the first trial only 5.3 hours of video material, but we had much more to use. Here you can see now we had this third journal paper, we used 156 hours of video material that we classified and analyzed. And don't be afraid, there are a lot of numbers now on the table, but let's concentrate only on the direct work here. So we still had electricians and plumbers in the data set, and we saw that roughly 24% or exactly 24% of the time from electrician is spent on direct work, and only 13.6% is spent on direct work from plumbers and HVAC workers, what is much lower than this 30 to 70 trend that we usually see from work sampling studies. And overall, we have less than 20% spent on direct work in this data sample, what means that more than 80% of the time is spent on activities that workers might be not trained for, since we are usually training workers for installation work and carrying this out. So this is raising a question in terms of, at least here in Finland, we are discussing this now, like if we are training workers for the installation work, especially knowing every little step and doing work precisely and in a good quality, why they spend only 20% of their time for that? And could we have other workers that are trained for other activities that are carried out throughout the day, carrying out those 80% and have maybe some benefits from that to specialize more on those things? And also this data set confirmed throughout the 8-hour workday, we have a lot of activity changes within them, 455 in numbers. And in the next step, we studied what is happening between those direct work sessions or installation work when it happens. So we basically counted how long it takes when direct work ends and when direct work stops, continues, and what is happening in between, what activities are carried out, but also if they are wasteful or not, and what is the cause for those wasteful activities in between. So we call this basically the disturbance duration, and we clustered them and found 3 different kind of disturbances. Short-term disturbances that take in average only 1.5 minutes and are more often carried out by electrical workers due to their stereotypical way of doing work, and they're usually not wasteful. Then we have medium-term disturbances, would take an average 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and more often than more often seen in plumbing and HVAC work, and they are wasteful, especially since there's a lot of motion involved. And then we also have long-term disturbances that take more than 20 minutes and also more often seen in plumbing and HVAC work. And they are also wasteful due to motion and transportation. And here we get, those icons show already a bit that we get to this punchline, what is in the title, no work gets done when you're on the run, showing a bit the type of the most observed category of waste, what is related to movement, either through motion or transportation, or even other categories of waste. And we also wanted to understand, like I said, what are the causes of this waste. So we showed how often preconditions are missing, and most often it's component and materials that are missing in all 3 types of disturbances. Then we have equipment and machinery, sufficient space and connecting work that is missing. What is maybe not that surprising, but one interesting fact here is to see that even though short-term disturbances are not wasteful, still there are missing preconditions included in them, what gives or what shows a bit the potential to even improve those short-term disturbances. Nevertheless, the focus in improving should be on medium and long-term disturbances, since they're having such a big impact and they're also taking so much time if we get to such a disturbance. And then my doctoral thesis concludes with showing aspects that would improve the operations flow and the practices workers are carried out. So they are based on the results that we found in those 3 publications. And I roughly sketched them on 2 slides, one showing planning aspects. So operations design would be highly beneficial to integrate workers early on in thinking about constructability issues, logistics issues, space allocation. How could we improve that? Since the thesis is showing in more detail than this presentation, how this is related to one and another. Then also enhanced information systems so that we track and analyze data in real time, but also have them integrated in systems and give continuously access for workers to get those information. Like, since we saw that, for example, early planners want to have access to information and get the information even before arrival on site. Another way of also providing the information, and not just provide the information, give it to the workers and they do whatever they do with it, but also visualize the information, what would firstly enhance the transparency, but also in the other sense, it makes them understand, since usually visual management is meant to have easy to understand formats to aid the task execution in this case. And then control aspects could be that we standardize more the way of working, for example, using mobile workstations, since actually workers are carrying out effort in preparing mobile workstation on site, at least what I saw from the videos. They are preparing for every stage, for every project, their own mobile workstations and go around with them. So that could be one way of improving. Then also human robotic collaboration for site logistics or prefabrication could be one method to improve. And then also, since we saw that most of the waste that we tracked was related to movement related patterns, it would be beneficial to track location data, but at the same time also pedometer data, what is basically steps taken by workers, since location data itself, I think it's not sufficient enough to understand those micro level details of how people are working around. One example to make this more understandable is, for example, if we're doing if a worker is doing installation work, they most likely stop and maybe in the installation area, for example, and they will focus on doing the job and then continue organizing maybe in this installation area, what might be an indicator for work preparation or working with the materials. But if the worker is out of the installation area and moving around, that might be an indicator that that it's more searching or it's more hauling materials. So we can understand a bit of those micro level movement related patterns from that. But also when I looked at the differences between HVAC and plumbers versus electricians, that electricians were moving quickly throughout the building, especially when they're pulling the cables vertically throughout the building from top to down and then maybe horizontally on the cable trays. So this was more stop and go movement. And when HVAC workers or plumbers were doing their job, especially preparing work, they were standing quite for long times, welding pieces. So it's kind of different how electricians and plumbers move throughout the building. So I think that could be emphasized, since based on that we could figure out, is there, for example, a location or an area where a worker has to go often, but actually it was not scheduled that the worker goes there often. So if we figure that out and maybe get even pop-ups or notifications on that, if we have some intelligence behind analyzing those movement patterns, we could see where to intervene and improve the situation so that workers don't have to move out of their installation areas or preparation areas often, and improve the operations flow, especially have less disturbances there. Another way of understanding also what this thesis is showing is visualizing the operations flow. And for that, I would like to remind of the start of the presentation. So what we earlier saw, at least in flow charts or flow lines, we have a linear relationship of different traits going through different locations. And with this thesis now, I would like to show that we have a more detailed understanding of one location, for example, how work is carried out. We have less of a line, less of a linear relationship. It's more like an incremental flowchart or in incremental, let's say, steps. So the green ones are the installation work. Between those green blocks, I would say we have different activities that can be wasteful or not wasteful. And they can also be carried out throughout different locations, since not always, if we schedule an installation area, the workers will work and install everything in this installation area. Since I saw that plumbers, for example, they were carrying out the whole week preparation work and installation work in different locations, since they had to spread out, since they had the sewage pipes they wanted to install them, and they did it only as a whole team on a Friday. So the whole week they were preparing this, but in different locations. So if we schedule this in a way that we think workers would carry out work only in the scheduled installation area, I think this is not correct and doesn't help them. So in terms of space allocation, we can improve our thinking, what workers really need to prepare and carry out work. And then also this shows a bit the disturbances in between, what I visualized here in yellow for short, orange for medium, and long, red in long disturbances. And with that, I would like to finish the presentation. But before that, if you're interested in the topic and also in the data, Olli Seppänen, so my earlier supervisor, and me, we made this whole data set of the time motion study publicly available. It's for free. You can download it. You can check it out. If you're interested in collaborating, just reach out. We would be happy to do so. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was very interesting and a bit scary, of course, also. But thank you very much. Very interesting presentation, and yeah, a lot of information and data. 3 years or more of study in half an hour. 5, yeah, sure. So maybe we need to go a little bit deeper in some of the information you presented here, and I can see Christian has already marked with his hand. And Christian, go ahead.
You still muted.
Yeah.
Sorry, that happens every time. Thank you for an inspiring presentation. I was wondering, when you show, I think it's really interesting to go deep and measure what actually happens. When you had a couple of slides showing ideas for improvement. I don't remember the numbers of them, but these, yeah, the planning aspect and control aspects. So I think it's probably right and correct. And the challenge is, it's way easier to come up with the ideas than actually implementing. That's one thing. And then especially it's probably pretty well documented that some of the first one with collaborative planning, with last planner system and so on, has real impact. But when you go to the more digital ones, it's probably great ideas, but sometimes you waste more time on tracking than you actually improve and so on. So have you any real measures on the impact of those ideas, if it's just good ideas, or or have you implemented just a couple of them and then measured again and seen the impact?
That's a very good point. I think since we have to be honest and clear here, those are, so let's say, because it's a compilation thesis, what means we use 3 different papers. So we were analyzing the data there. So, and the thesis in the end is making suggestion how to improve that. So there has been no implementations on them yet, and also not measuring how they would impact. Just to give an example, I was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I met with a company here in Finland who is doing real-time tracking of workers and location data, and having all the informations, project informations in a system, and using AI and going through that. So you have an AI assistant doing that. But they're also having issues in getting this to the client, since they're saying, okay, I'm already so busy, and if you give me more information, how should I use that? I don't even understand what you're actually giving me and providing me here, even though everything is implemented and done, like you said. It's very hard to make or show the impact of it, and my thesis is not showing the impact yet. Nevertheless, now with the new job, actually there's a project coming up, an internal development project at VTT, where we are trying to implement kind of a, how can I call it, like a shop floor excellence program, what would basically develop this further, the ideas that we have here. And then I would be very happy to get this out, and if someone is interested to track also the impact that it might have.
Thank you. Rolf has a question as well.
Yeah, it's I had written about the exact same question that Christian raised, but I didn't post it. So very good. In continuation of that, I was wondering about when you had this, you're using the learning to see phrase in your work, and I was thinking of the notion of Gemba going to the site and observing what is going on, and with the idea of improving. So this collecting data is more like observing and then going home again. So do you have any more direct human action based on the data, or that's in the line of Christian, that it's the kind of implementation that we need? So it's measuring without improving. We know better now what is not working, but we are not doing anything to improve.
Yeah.
Is that a clear question? No.
Probably there are no clear questions at all. But anyway, this is not a problem. I give you my point on it. So first thing we did after filming on site, we also did interviews with the workers that we observed and filmed, to basically, first of all, get an understanding if we are actually classifying correctly, and if we are seeing the right things that they are also seeing. And the feedback was yes, or it was basically in line with what we are doing. And also the workers then started to think in a way of improving their own work because they learned from it. So there has been at least this aspect that we included their point of view and not just observed in our isolated researcher mind. Towards the implementation in industry, no, we have not yet, since it's a purely research-driven doctoral thesis that is clearly on the practical side. But nevertheless, it was trying to understand better what is happening and trying to understand the workers better. But there has not been direct implementations based on that. They're coming up now and starting to develop. What is the project now after the doctoral thesis?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Any other question or comments? Yeah, Christopher, you were talking about that the 80% that was not direct work that you in Finland were looking at how or who can maybe else do this kind of work. Was that what you were talking about? Maybe some robots or could you? Yeah, was that or do you have any other information regarding this work with the last 80%?
Yeah, well, at least this 80-20 percentage showing here raised a lot of attention in the media in Finland. So this is now becoming a popular topic that people discussing, since it's a nice way of drawing things black and white and scare people. Nevertheless, I think it's nice that it got so much attention, because we are bringing the topic to the media and to the attention of everyone, and the companies here at least drawing conclusions on it. So they're trying to improve based on that. Especially, at least, so people are reaching out to us. And the other thing is that they are now also looking from residential buildings, but also they would like to apply it in the infrastructure sector. And the trade union reached out as well. I gave an interview there where we are discussing especially how we are training people and how we are using them on site. So if we, from a management perspective, push most of the responsibilities to the workers or to the subcontractors, and then even though it's maybe not on purpose, but if those details are not clearly figured out, we cannot expect them to do only installation work. So we will never reach 100% there, what is unrealistic. So I have to think of what 80 to 20 means, but also where we could end up looking in different industries, maybe what they have there. But yeah, it's at least a bigger discussion now that is going on, especially with AI and robotics in the background. How could we specialize the work that is done on sites so that we separate tasks that are rather simple, like carrying materials, searching them, finding them, and bringing them to the workers so that they can focus more on those works and be more in a flow, if we can call it that way.
Yes.
Was this somehow answering what you had in mind?
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
I guess I think in the line of that we have some work done in Denmark on that. Also, Morten actually did a report called "The Helping Hand" with a Danish company trying to dissolve the work done into what do you need skilled work for, and what could be done by an unskilled worker, and trying to get the teams get the people on the team, so you have a balance that unskilled workers is doing unskilled work. Or the other part of that project was actually that the different trades could help each other. So if carpenters had spare time, they could go help the electrician doing unskilled work, if they had the time. And the fine thing about that project was that then there was some sort of good karma balance, that then the team, the electrician would help when they had free work, some of the others, and it would sort of balance out. But you could get help to do unskilled work. So it's quite interesting to get people to work at the highest level of their skill most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure it can be translated into English or German, the report that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds very interesting. I go and have a look. And I know that Søren and Christina were also earlier working on job satisfaction studies and mental well-being. I don't know if this was actually a part of it, but I think this is correlated here, since if we saw how much this kind of operation flow is disturbed and changing activities often very quickly, at least from other studies, also from different fields, they are saying that the more you can focus on a challenging task where you have a bit of a skill set for, the more you feel in a flow. There's also a psychological concept of flow, what is rather interesting to study. So if we want to improve also this aspect in the industry, like how attractive it is to work in the industry, we could think from this perspective as well, since I think it's correlated, even though there's no direct research on that topic.
Oh, Søren, I would really like you to. I think there were some similarities in some of the work that you have done, or some of the questions you have asked the workers in Denmark about. I don't know if you can comment on that. Do you see some big differences, or does some of the results here from Christopher's work align with the work that you have done in Aarhus University?
Yeah, it does, and Christina, you can add to this afterwards. But definitely, we asked them how the workers they perceived what they perceive to disturb their well-being most, and definitely that they have waste of time, that they have to do this interrupted things is annoying to most of the workers. So there's definitely a correlation there. But Christina, you've worked more with it, so maybe you can add to it.
Hi. Hi, Chris. I'm also happy to see you here. You know
Hi.
that we have been talking a lot about the similarities of our work in Finland and here. And there are several similarities. The first one, the studies that you made to understand how workers spend their time, or how they feel that they are spend their time. So also the study that we made about, that you mentioned about job satisfaction, and some mentioned, they generally say that they feel that they can spend their time in a more efficient way because they feel that they don't have, in general, the thing that they are not, which is the thing that is causing more dissatisfaction, is not having enough information. So as you said, not having enough information is what is having also a lot of waste, because they need to look for the information and they need to create their own plans. So also we have like the kind of same of results here. And also it was interesting, the last part, when you mentioned about tracking the number of steps and also the locators that we are, because you know that we have been doing something similar here about using smartwatches to understand where the workers are. And what we saw here is that understanding where workers spend their time is important to understand how workers spend their time. So it's not about which kind of activities they are doing, but also where are they spending their time. So what we saw, it was a strong correlation, as the more they need to spend time in storage workspace, in transportation workspace, the less time they are going to be spent on production activities. So how logistic aspects impact on direct work. And yes, I'm happy to having you here because our work is very similar. We have been talking a lot about that.
Thanks. One point also that I can mention here is what Christina said about that most likely if workers are on site, they have their own perception of flow and they might feel satisfied with that. But it's a bit, I describe it in my work, and it just goes down to this cave concept from Platon. So if a person is sitting in the cave there and is provided with whatever information, they will create their own perception, they will create their own understanding of how the process should look like. But if we provide more information that is enhancing the transparency or giving them better information, like visually provided, for example, we would get to a completely different stage, I would guess, even though there's no, like the earlier questions where there's no implementation on that yet. But I describe it also here in the visual management part of the slide. We would get from a frog to a bird eye view, what means at the moment a worker is basically, let's say he's in a room surrounded by walls. He can see basically what is happening around him, maybe hear what is happening around him. But we get to the stage where also the actor research project ended up with providing informations from this model perspective, where the worker can see which locations I could go next on the whole floor or in the whole building. We could enhance his perspectives in a way from that he's not just seeing what is around him, looking up, it's more like looking down to the whole floor, to the whole building, and what are ready-made preconditions already if they're visualized there. So that would enhance workers also how they see actually the work site, even though it's a digital format that we are showing there.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Rolf.
please.
No, I think Christina first. It's probably more relevant. I have another topic.
Christina, please.
Zach, I really like that comment that you made about Platon, about if you don't have enough information, you will start to create your own ideas and you will have another perspective about how the work should be done. And this is something also that we have data about that the workers that have complete or a very understanding of the activities that they need to do, like they need to do a specific task and they know how to do, they spend more time in productive work because they don't need to figure out what needs to do, and they don't need to figure out where I need to pick the material or what other preparation activities I need to do. So I can give you an example that in a case study that we made in Hochskill, the worker that he knew that he needed to place some insulations on the roof. He spent like 80% of their time doing production activities because he knew everything that he needed to do. But other workers that the activities wasn't well defined as that activity, they spend like 50% of less because they needed to, okay, and now where is the material? Where is the plan? So yes, in general, having the information impacts in how they are spending their time in job site. So if you have the much information that you have, probably the more time that you will be productive. Yeah, that you will spend in productive activities.
Thank you, Christina. And Rolf?
Yeah. Or the more information you have, the more time you will spend looking on information. But my question was something else. You had I think quite interesting word about disturbances. Is that right? Is that disturbances, external disturbances from outside the working team, or is it also disturbances within the team? But I think the notion of disturbances coming from outside, disturbing the people working, is quite interesting. It's usually not measured. It's hidden within conversation, discussion, or something like that. Do we have any details on that or further comments?
So let's clarify what we mean with disturbance first. Since it's research work, we were looking at studies earlier, and they used the term interruptions earlier. But interruptions are used for something else, more on the process flow level. That's why we use the word disturbance to describe the activities between direct work activities. To get to the external-internal perspective you mentioned, is we classified here what are building designs and specifications or directives could be seen as external. They have some impact, but it's not the biggest impact as we can see here. Surely there is a lot of things that we don't see from observing workers via videos, since we also had to mute all these videos due to GDP reasons. So I cannot tell you what they were discussing. I just saw they are discussing. If it's work-related, not work-related, internal, external, I cannot say since I didn't listen to the audio. But we can clearly see that there's a lot of room for discussions. And you can see from this, what is that, mimic and gestic, how they are showing how they are discussing that it's work-related, and figuring this out, especially when we analyzed MEP traits. There was a lot of collaboration and cooperation between them, figuring out who is going when there, especially if they had a job related to drywalling, since there it needs quite a lot of collaboration between the traits, for example. Yeah, that's what I can say from what we did in the studies.
Okay, thank you. I think it could be interesting to do the research into to have this distinction about when there are obstacles to do your work, or you need to do something, but when you are actually disturbed in your work. I think in my work and office work, disturbances is another level of non-direct work, but so it could be interesting to see that on the side as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think there's, I'd say also how I called it in the presentation, learning to understand, learning to see, and learning to analyze. So we are now at the analysis stage. So next steps have to be taken. And I think there's more to gain from further studies in different angles. I hope that this thesis or this research that we did clarifies a bit more what is happening, at least from these studies that we did, and can now go to the next step, learning to implement, for example. Like the first two comments, I think they were great, and we are especially on those stages now. So we are in the early stages, and I would hope, or at least I got the feedback that we are now opening up a new research stream, even though there's a lot of research. For example, Søren and Christina, they are doing already a lot in this field, but we are now getting to a quantitative stage. And since we did video camera studies, they are very manual, and there are a lot of time spent on that. So you don't even get the chance watching the making any implementations after finding something, because the project is over after you analyzed all the videos. So we have to get to stages automating this process, what I did now manually myself. But we are at this stage now that we are thinking about how could we understand better and how to automate more.
Great. So we'll see you in a year or two again, Christopher.
Maybe.
For the next level. Great.
Yeah.
Are there any more comments or questions for Christopher today? Yeah, Christina?
Continuing with this discussion about automation, how they understanding how they spend their time. What we feel, or we have been feeling in the last years, is that for us it's not such important to understand how they spend their time, but where they spend their time, and that's the reason that we move it for understanding distribution of time into work activities, and now are trying to focus on distribution of time in workspaces, and that's the reason that we are using GPS sensors to understand where the workers spend their time, because it's very hard to that there is a lot of machine learning applications that try to categorize the activities that the workers are doing on the job site, but it's very difficult. And also, I think that it's not so important to understand what kind of activity they are doing, but the place is more important, because we saw that the more time they spend in transportation workspaces or material workspaces is because as a manager, it's because we have room for improvement. So it's because there are something that can be done in a different way. Like if they spend a lot of time in transportation, is maybe because the logistic is affecting the flow of the project or of the process. So my suggestion, or what I'm thinking, is that understanding time in workspaces is also important as understanding spending and work activities.
Yes, I agree. I think you cannot get a good understanding if you follow only one data stream. We have to combine them.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And then I hope we would reduce the effort that management has to do to understand all the data that we are providing. Since I think wasn't Rolf who said the more information we provide, the more we have to study the information. I completely agree, and this is at the moment, at least from the discussions I have here in Finland, the problem in the industry, that we are providing more and more information, but we don't have anyone who wants to use the information, or if they use it, they don't spend so much time on actually improving the project anymore. So we have to find better ways to do that. Which then would also lead to disturbance in management.
Yeah, it's in some way what Wolf is saying in the chat as well. We would like to see more observing, improving, measure, improvement in the study field as well.
There's actually, if you look for similar studies that did direct impact on the project level, there's a master thesis, what was actually the starting point for my dissertation in the end. I can provide this later somewhere.
Yeah.
And but what an interesting fact there is that they're showing is like you can reach quickly by intervening and improving like 30% improvement, if I remember correctly the numbers. But the problem is, how do you do this in every project? Do you always spend first observing, having people on site? So first people have to go out and do the work to study and then make suggestions how to improve. Even though it's rather simple, I think that this is a saying to do that. But do you always want to end up in this loop? Okay, we get out of this loop and improve like on a portfolio level.
I totally agree. But it is tempting to do the simple improvement. Look, improve. Great, have improvement. But I totally agree that you have to be more tactical, strategic about it to get improvement in a longer perspective. But we need to get there beyond analyzing.
Yeah, I agree. That would be wonderful to get there. Even though, and there, I think that would be takeaway for the industry also to support research in this sense, because we were struggling a lot to get this research done, only on the observing level and the interview level. And if we have, I don't know how it is in work sampling, I did not, but Søren and Christina know better. But in time motion, if we use such methods to get to the details, we are not getting to the stage of improving as long as we are doing this manually. So we have to find combined efforts how to automate and improve then and measure the impact. And here, at least in Finland, there is now a consortium of industry players that are trying to improve the situation called Building 2030. I don't know if you have a similar thing in Denmark going on, but at least this is a great initiative to continue. Since we were struggling a lot to get those projects done, especially from a GDP perspective, that workers were not willing to join in the first run when we got to them.
I don't think we have a similar initiative here in Denmark right now. Can you tell a little bit more about, you also mentioned it in the beginning, you want to improve, what, 50% in Finland? This project going on for, what is it, 10 years or?
No, it's more the how to say, not a certain initiative, it's more like what all industry players are saying and what the Ministry of Environment is having as a target. But the Building 2030 is basically Aalto Universitet-led consortium where but it's voluntarily, you can join for a fee as a construction company. And then they are basically creating with the companies, there are, I think, 30 construction companies in the consortium, and they are building every year new topics. This year is, for example, on TACT and AI. Next year, they decide on the next topics. And basically, the companies give access to data so that the researchers can do the job. What is rather a good investment to do research and then implement it by yourself after you understood the results from it, and the results are presented in workshops. And they, if I'm correctly, they meet every month or every second month. So it's rather regular. And they're doing this already for some years now. So it's quite much established. It's a nice initiative, bringing especially the benefits from industry and research together.
Sounds very interesting as well.
Yeah.
Great. Do we have any more comments or questions from the audience today? Doesn't seem so. 1 hour exactly.
Wonderful, good timing.
Yeah, we would like to say thank you very much, Christopher. Very, very interesting to hear your work, hear about your work, and you have maybe a link or two you can share with us afterwards. Maybe also your presentation for
Sure.
For the participants today.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Christopher, and see you in a year or two.
You too.
That's a deal.
See you. Bye.